The year was 1991. A chill settled over Grantham and Kesteven Hospital, but it wasn't the winter air. A shadow had fallen on Ward 4, the children's ward. Innocent laughter, once a symphony of life, was replaced by a haunting silence. The culprit, a caregiver, a monster hiding in plain sight. Her name was Beverly Allitt, and she wore the mask of an angel, all the while wielding the instruments of death. Beverly Allitt, born in 1968, seemed an unlikely monster. She was the product of a typical English upbringing, nestled in the heart of a family that appeared to be the epitome of normalcy. Her early years were marked by the same milestones and memories that many of us share: school days, family outings, and the occasional scraped knee. But beneath this veneer of normality, something far more sinister was brewing. She grew up in the quaint county of Lincolnshire, England. The picturesque landscapes and serene environment seemed like the perfect backdrop for a peaceful childhood. The rolling hills and charming villages painted a picture of tranquility, a stark contrast to the darkness that would later emerge. But behind the facade of normalcy, darkness festered. The seemingly idyllic surroundings masked the turmoil brewing within Beverly. Her behavior began to deviate from the norm, hinting at the malevolent path she would eventually take. The shadows of her mind grew darker, casting a pall over her seemingly ordinary life. Allitt craved attention, often feigning illness or injury. Her need for sympathy and care became a recurring theme, a cry for help that went unnoticed. She would go to great lengths to be the center of attention, manipulating those around her with her fabricated ailments. This behavior was a precursor to the more sinister actions that lay ahead. This thirst for the spotlight would later morph into something far more sinister. Her desire for control and recognition grew, warping her sense of empathy and morality. The seeds of darkness planted in her youth began to take root, setting the stage for the horrors to come. As a young woman, Allitt pursued a career in nursing, drawn to the power it offered. The profession seemed to be a perfect fit for her, an opportunity to be needed, to be in control, and to be at the center of attention. She donned the uniform with pride, masking her true intentions behind a facade of compassion and care. She landed a job at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in 1991, eager to tend to the most vulnerable patients, children. The pediatric ward became her domain, a place where she could exercise her newfound power. Her colleagues saw her as a dedicated nurse, but the children under her care would soon become the unwitting victims of her dark desires. Little did anyone know, a predator had walked among them, cloaked in scrubs of blue and white. Her cold, blank stare concealed the malevolence within, as she moved through the hospital corridors with a chilling sense of purpose. The stage was set for a series of tragic events that would shock the nation and reveal the true extent of Beverly Allitt's darkness. The nightmare began subtly. A child's breathing would become labored, another's heart would race erratically. Seemingly random, these incidents were, in fact, meticulously orchestrated. Allitt, driven by a twisted need for control and attention, began to play God. She became the arbiter of life and death. Her weapon of choice? Insulin and potassium. These substances, vital in the right doses, became lethal in her hands. She injected them into unsuspecting victims, sending their tiny bodies into chaos. The ward, once a haven, transformed into her own twisted playground. The children, unable to articulate the pain inflicted upon them, suffered silently. Their small bodies, racked with inexplicable agony, could only express their torment through tears and silent cries. Each day, they faced a new battle, their innocent eyes pleading for relief that never came. The sterile walls of the hospital, meant to be a place of healing, became a prison of pain for these young souls. Their suffering was a silent scream, echoing through the cold, clinical corridors, unheard and unheeded by those who should have been their protectors. Their cries were dismissed as typical ailments. The medical staff, overwhelmed and overworked, often brushed off their complaints as mere symptoms of common childhood illnesses. The children's pleas for help were met with indifference, their pain trivialized and ignored. Each tear shed was a testament to their unspoken agony, a cry for help that fell on deaf ears. The very people entrusted with their care became blind to their suffering, attributing their distress to the usual maladies that afflict the young. It was a tragic oversight, a failure to see the signs of something far more sinister at play. Their deteriorating conditions were attributed to pre-existing conditions, doctors relying on medical charts and past histories, failed to see the pattern of decline. Each worsening symptom was chalked up to an underlying issue, a pre-existing condition that masked the true cause of their suffering. Parents, desperate for answers, were reassured that their children's conditions were being managed, that the decline was expected. But behind the scenes, something far more malevolent was at work. A hidden hand guiding their children towards a dark fate. The true cause of their suffering remained obscured, hidden in plain sight. All the while, Allitt reveled in the chaos she created, basking in the attention she received as she heroically tried to save the very lives she was destroying. Her actions were a twisted game, a perverse pleasure derived from the suffering of the innocent. She wore a mask of compassion, a facade that hid her true nature. To her colleagues, she was a dedicated nurse, a hero in the face of tragedy. But behind closed doors, she was the architect of their pain. A wolf in sheep's clothing, manipulating the lives of those she was meant to protect. Her sinister smile was a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within. Parents, desperate for answers, clung to hope. They prayed for miracles, for a sign that their children would recover. Each day was a roller coaster of emotions, a battle between hope and despair. They placed their trust in the medical staff, believing that their children were in safe hands. The hospital, a place of healing, became a beacon of hope, a sanctuary where they believed their prayers would be answered. But beneath the surface, their trust was being betrayed, their hopes dashed by the very person they relied on. The facade of care and compassion hid a dark secret, one that would shatter their world. They trusted the nurses, the doctors, unaware that a wolf in sheep's clothing walked among them. The hospital staff, seen as guardians of health, were oblivious to the danger within their ranks. The parents, desperate and vulnerable, placed their faith in the very person who was causing their children's suffering. Each interaction, each reassuring word, was a lie. A deception that masked the true horror of what was happening. The nurse, with her kind words and gentle touch, was a master of manipulation, hiding her true intentions behind a veil of care. The trust placed in her was a cruel irony, a tragic twist in a tale of silent suffering. The death toll rose, each tiny life extinguished, leaving behind a trail of grief and unanswered questions. The hospital, once a place of hope, became a place of mourning. Each loss was a devastating blow, a reminder of the fragility of life. Parents, left with only memories and unanswered questions, grieved for the futures that would never be. The hospital memorial, adorned with flowers, stood as a silent testament to the lives lost, a reminder of the innocent souls taken too soon. The true extent of the tragedy remained hidden, a dark secret that cast a long shadow over the lives of those left behind. Suspicions, like whispers in the wind, eventually grew into a roar. The number of deaths and near-fatal incidents on Ward 4 was statistically impossible. A pattern emerged, a chilling common denominator. Beverly Allitt was present at every turn. The authorities were called in. The hospital, once a place of healing, became a crime scene. Every drip, every syringe, every vial became a piece of evidence in a macabre puzzle. The truth, as they say, was about to be revealed. The evidence against Allitt was overwhelming. Medical records, meticulously analyzed, exposed her deadly game. Witnesses, both medical staff and parents, recounted her suspicious behavior. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered, now formed a damning picture. In 1993, Allitt stood trial for 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder, and 11 counts of causing grievous bodily harm. The courtroom became a battleground between good and evil, innocence and depravity. The world watched, horrified, as the details of her crimes unfolded. The jury's verdict was swift and unanimous: guilty. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over everyone present. The gavel's strike echoed like a final, irrevocable judgment, sealing Beverly Allitt's fate. The angel of death, as she had come to be known, was now officially condemned by society. Justice had prevailed, but it offered little solace to the families forever scarred by her actions. The grief was palpable, a heavy cloud that hung over the cemetery where the victims were laid to rest. Tears flowed freely, and the air was thick with sorrow and unanswered questions. How could someone entrusted with care commit such heinous acts? Beverly Allitt, the angel of death, was sentenced to 13 life terms, a punishment that reflected the gravity of her crimes. As the prison cell door clanged shut behind her, it symbolized not just her physical confinement, but the moral and ethical boundaries she had crossed. The handcuffs were a stark reminder of the trust she had betrayed. Her crimes were deemed so heinous, so devoid of humanity, that society could only respond with the harshest of sentences. The judge's stern face reflected the collective outrage and horror. Newspaper headlines screamed of her atrocities, painting a picture of a woman who had become a monster in the eyes of the public. She would spend the rest of her days behind bars, isolated from the world she had so deeply wounded. The watchtower loomed over the high-security prison, a constant reminder of the vigilance required to keep such a dangerous individual contained. In solitary confinement, she would have ample time to reflect on the lives she had destroyed. But true justice remained elusive. The broken scales of justice symbolized the imbalance that could never be righted. The empty courthouse hallway echoed with the silence of unresolved pain. Even the gavel, now broken, seemed to signify the limitations of the legal system in addressing such profound loss. The lives lost could not be restored. Memorial candles flickered in the dark, casting a somber glow on old family photographs. Flowers laid at grave sites were a poignant reminder of the innocence that had been stolen. Each photograph, each flower, told a story of a life cut short, of dreams unfulfilled. The pain inflicted, the trust shattered, would forever linger. The shattered mirror reflected the broken trust, the irreparable damage done to the community. In dark rooms, people cried alone, grappling with their grief and the betrayal they felt. Even the hospital, once a place of healing, now bore the scars of vandalism, a testament to the deep wounds left behind. The sentence, while severe, could never truly account for the depths of her depravity. The dark, abandoned prison cell stood as a stark reminder of the isolation that awaited her. Behind bars, her shadowy figure was a ghost of the person she once was. Newspaper clippings laid out on a table chronicled her crimes, but they could never fully capture the horror and heartbreak she had caused. The case of Beverly Allitt sent shockwaves throughout the world. The idea that a caregiver, someone entrusted with the lives of the vulnerable, could commit such atrocities was unfathomable. Trust, once implicit in the medical profession, was now irrevocably shaken. Hospitals, once seen as sanctuaries, now carried an undercurrent of fear. Parents, once comforted by the presence of nurses, now looked on with suspicion. The very foundation of the doctor-patient relationship had been shaken to its core. The legacy of Beverly Allitt is a dark one, a chilling reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. Her case forced the medical community to confront its vulnerabilities, to implement stricter protocols, to prioritize patient safety above all else, but the scars remain. The families of her victims continue to grieve, haunted by the what-ifs and the stolen futures. And the world, forever marked by her cruelty, is left to grapple with the question, how could this happen? And how can we prevent it from happening again?